Hello gentlefolk, my name is Malte Krug. Welcome to another episode of All About Keys. In 1983, Yamaha changed the landscape of synthesizers forever. Of course, I'm talking about the famous DX7, one of the most successful synthesizers in history, both loved and hated. The timing was perfect for new sounds, and the DX7 sounded very different to most synths that came before it. But you know all this from masses of other videos already, so I'll do something different today. Along with the DX7 came a trimmed down and cheaper version of it, the DX9. You can already see both of these synths behind me, and when we take a closer look in a minute, you'll see that they really are brothers in appearance. But not only that. Trimmed down means that the DX9 lacks some features of the DX7 to cut costs. For example, the DX9's keypad is not velocity sensitive, which I consider personally the biggest flaw. The FM synthesis inside these machines is very flexible when it comes to sounds that can be played more dynamically. And that is one reason why the DX7 sold so well compared to older synths. Even pianists who never before showed interest in synthesizers were attracted. Some other cuts of functionality are only 20 memory slots for storage of sounds compared to the DX7's 32. No cartridge slot to extend the number of set sound memory. External data functions like backups and loading of other sounds need to be done on cassette tape, like on an old Commodore 64 computer, if you remember those, and a few other things. I don't want to go into the details of FM synthesis here, but the DX7 uses 32 so-called algorithms to connect 6 sinus oscillators, Yamaha calls them operators, in different arrangements, which affects how these operators modulate each other. The DX9 in comparison, although internally almost identical to the DX7, just uses 8 algorithms and 4 operators. Yamaha just crippled the firmware so that 2 operators are not accessible in the DX9, among some other functions. This leads to less complex sounds in the DX9. Both are still 16-voice polyphonic, and until the V50 workstation in 1988, the DX9 is the only 4-operator FM synth from Yamaha with that number of voices. The rest only has 8. But like I already said, internally, both machines are almost identical. They even share a service manual, and there is an altered firmware available on GitHub that turns a DX9 into a DX7, in a way. There's still only 20 sound memories, and the keyboard doesn't magically turn into a dynamic one, unfortunately, but the missing extra 2 operators and 24 algorithms get activated, and it completely accepts DX7 sounds via sysx. It even can be played dynamically through MIDI. Considering prices for used DX7s nowadays, I don't really think it's necessary to do this conversion to a DX9, but it sounds like a fun project to try. And this brings me to the topic of this video. How similar, actually, is an original unaltered DX9 to the DX7 Mark I? A while ago, Espen Croft made a video about sending sounds from a DX9 to the bigger brother DX7 through MIDI. Both machines automatically dump the respective sysx data to the MIDI out when you hit one of the sound memory buttons. That comes handy. It turned out that the DX9 sounds sound identical when dumped into and played from a DX7. The 8 DX9 algorithms, remember, those are the possible combinations of operators, are also contained in the DX7 as part of one or more of its 6 operator algorithms. The extra 2 operators in the DX7 are simply not used. Now let's go back to 1987 and let me tell you about an incident that happened to me then. In said year, I bought my first professional synthesizer, the Yamaha DX7 Mark II, the son of this DX7. And one day, I took it to my band's guitarist's house for making some noise together. His father happened to have a DX9 for a few years already, and for some reason that I can't remember, we connected both with a MIDI cable. DX7 MIDI out to the DX9 MIDI in. And to our surprise, when I selected the sound on my DX7 too, the DX9 showed the sound's name, which it never does with its own sounds, and he was able to play what my synth pushed into the edit buffer of his DX9. And today I will try to do the same again and show you what might be a cheap source for new sounds for DX9 owners. There are tons of DX7 sounds on the internet. You'll see. And how similar will the sounds be? Will the DX9 eat all of them, and can it reproduce them properly? Here we go. And there we are. Both machines look pretty similar, but I already told you about the main technical differences. My DX9 looks pretty battered, but it's been like this since I got it, and it's been really cheap, so I didn't care. As you can see, my DX7 is pimped with a gray matter E expansion, so it has more internal memory banks, which I can switch here. It's 10. And it has better MIDI capabilities, among a lot of other things. The original DX7 came out right after MIDI was introduced, and its MIDI implementation was pretty basic. If you're interested in me making a detailed video about this gray matter E expansion, please leave a comment down below. Both DXs have only one mono output each and contain no effects unit whatsoever, so I will add a bit of reverb to get a stereo sound. Just a bit nicer. I decided to use a reverb unit from the early 80s, in this case the Alesis XT. The DX7's MIDI out is connected to the DX9's MIDI in, and like I mentioned, the DX9 doesn't even react to velocity when played through MIDI. You have to activate sysx data in both machines. On the DX9 the function can be found hitting button 6, function button 6, and I already switched it on. Let's test what happens when I send sounds to it from the DX7 using MIDI sysx. So these sounds we're checking are nothing special. They are the ones that came with the ROM cards with the DX7, and this one is the master collection. So let's see, we're hitting the first sound of the DX7, which is this one, and it's dynamic. Some brass, let's hit it. And DX9. Got it. Let's see how it sounds. Bit brighter. Oh yeah. Compared to the DX7. So what is happening? We can check for the structures of the sound. I'm only going to do this for some of the sounds, not for all of them, so it won't get too boring and too repetitive. So let's see, we're using algorithm 22 on the DX7. It is 4 carriers and 2 modulators. One modulator is modulating carrier 3, 4, and 5. The DX11 is using algorithm 6, which is that one, which, as we can see, represents 4 of the 6 operators in the DX7's algorithm. So I guess whatever the operators 1 and 2 are doing won't be represented in the DX9. DX9 again, and DX7 again. So let's see what else. This, by the way, while sending the sound to the DX9, is the only time you can see the name of the sound in the display. When you're switching to the internal sounds of the DX9, you won't see anything. Well, at least no name, so you have to refer to the old-fashioned paper list. Well, that's an internal brass sound, which I put in to show what the DX9 can sound like. And they programmed the envelopes a bit that you can mimic a bit of dynamics if you play staccato. It's a bit mellower, but if you hit the keys a little bit longer, they will actually sound like as if velocity would open up the filter, which it doesn't. So let's see what's next. Well, there are some sounds that just don't work. When there's no name shown, the DX9 doesn't want to eat the sysx data that's coming from the DX7. There's E piano 1, which is obviously the famous one. which sounds better with some chorus, which in this case is coming from the SE70 from Boss. There's not a lot that goes on top of a Boss chorus. Now, what does the DX9 make out of it? Ooh. That sounds harsh. Just out of curiosity, they're using algorithm 5, which is 2 stacks of 2 operators, and DX7 is using algorithm 5 as well, but that's 3 stacks of 2 operators each. And the DX7 is adding the belly part. I mean, the bell-ish part. And the rest adds body. But the bellish part is the important bit of this sound. And the DX9 came with a cassette tape, which contained 6 banks of data to put into the DX9. So we got more sounds, and I made my own collection of like the 20 best I like to put in here. And one of them is actually a not too bad DX7-ish electronic piano. Well, the missing velocity really makes the sound suffer. So that didn't translate that well. Let's check. Next. Well, this bass is on like every second pop song of the 80s. But won't land in the DX9. Next. Okay, he got that one. Electronic organ. That will just need some Leslie cabinet, actually. There we go. How does this sound? Not too shabby. And I already checked it out. If you dissect this, the DX7 just uses another pair of operators to add some more of those harmonies, which on a regular Hammond would be represented by those drawbars. Okay, what do we got next? There's some more, which he doesn't need. The harpsichord is not that interesting. Tubular bells, which is another really famous DX7 sound. That's instant Top Gun. How does it sound from this machine? Nope. At least not in the low registers. Still usable and tweakable. But, of course, Yamaha made a version of this sound having the restrictions of the DX9 in mind, and it sounds like this. DX7 again. That's not too far apart. Still, Okay, another one in this bank is voice 1, which sounds like, well, pseudo choir. Very silent movie vibe. How's this sound? Not exactly like vocals. There's another thing in the DX9 which is missing from the DX7, and those are keyboard scaling, which are basically volume curves of each individual operator in the algorithm. So you can have a carrier having less impact in the upper register to avoid some harsh modulation of the carrier spectrum. And that's why some of the sounds on the DX9 just are really harsh when they originally come from the DX7, because they ignore all the keyboard scaling. We go to the next bank, and so the piano sounds don't work. Some of the E-pianos work again, but I was thinking of that one, which is kind of belly. DX7 and FM synthesis especially is very good when it comes to bellish and very attacky sounds. And, well, this is one of them, a celeste. Very Harry Potterish. DX9 version when coming from the DX7. That is nice. But this is a synth sound, for example. Okay, now I'm playing it poly, but I guess it should be played like. The early DX7 and obviously DX9 couldn't save function data, which would tell the keyboard, play this one in mono mode, for example. Or you can't program the range of the pitch band for each individual sound, which is kind of impractical. With the Grey Matter E expansion, you can actually do that, and you can send it via MIDI as well, but the DX9 doesn't understand it. But now, let's listen to that sound again on the DX9. It's a solo synth. Completely usable, different than the DX7 one, but usable. Syn brass on the DX7 sounds like this. Now from the DX9. Still syn brass, different, usable, definitely. different, but usable. So, the result of the whole thing is that some sounds actually can be dumped into the DX9, but they not necessarily sound the same. Which is no surprise considering the differences of the sound engine of both machines. The conversion basically works, but the DX9 only eats the sysx of DX7 sounds that are based on a certain set of algorithms. The results most of the time sound different than the DX7 sounds they come from, but can be used as a starting point for own creations, which is never a bad thing. I hope this video has been of some interest for you. If so, it would be great if you consider hitting the like button down below or even subscribe to this channel and ring the bell. Then you will get notified about new videos as soon as I will drop them here. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.